Hello everybody, this is Victor here, aka Vrdnyn. I'm the producer of Riovaz's latest hit single, I Feel Fantastic, and I've been getting a lot of questions about it, so I thought it'd be a good idea if I did a full breakdown of this track that I produced in Logic Pro, and I hope that all the producers out there will find this useful. So let's get straight into it. It is important to note that this version is gonna sound different than the original version because the track was sped up. So I'm gonna show you the slow version, how it was produced, and then at the end of the video, I'll just show you how Riovaz went ahead and kind of shifted the pitch and the tempo of the track, and then we'll get the original sound right away. So overall, I tried to be very minimalistic with the production of this track. There really isn't all that much going on. I'm trying to give as much space to Rio for his vocals, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start away with the chronological order of the sounds that get introduced. So first things first, we have the sign pad, and here's what it sounds like. I actually did a lot of processing on this sign pad over here. I got it using the Evoke synth in Logic, is the vocoder. The most important thing from this synth is definitely the glide function right around here. So I just wanted to have as much glide as possible because it just makes the sound very gnarly and pretty unique. Without the processing, it's gonna sound pretty empty. I guess maybe empty isn't the word, it's just not gonna fit as well in the mix as opposed to having all of these elements over here. I'm using a studio FET type of compressor. It's actually compressing pretty heavily because without it, the track just sounds louder. So we're just compressing this so that it kind of fits in better with the other sounds and doesn't shine too much. So this sign pad right here, it can sound a little dirty and just not work with the baseline of the mix. So I want to be sure that I'm cutting off the low frequencies up to about 200 to 50 hertz, and then just doing a little notch right here in the lower mid-range area. And I'm doing that so that nothing gets on the way of the bass and there's just as much space overall as possible. I'm adding a little bit of fresh air. It's a great free plugin and it's just adding more shine to the track. So I'm adding stereo delay, which actually, aside from just adding delay, it's also making the track a little wider, which is a great effect. And here's what it sounds like before the stereo delay. And now after. So if you're hearing headphones, you'll definitely be able to hear that effect. And then an element that will get introduced later is the kickstart plugin, which basically just does sidechain compression, and I'm sidechaining it to the kick. What that means is that every time the kick hits, this sound is kind of gonna duck down and it's just gonna get groovier because things are just kind of gonna bounce off of each other. So I'll just quickly preview the kick and the kickstart sound and you'll hear what I'm talking about. And now I'm gonna turn kickstart off and then back on. That's kind of the secret sauce, if I'm being honest with you. And then I'm also doing a couple of sends right here. These are just kind of a part of my template. And really, I just have delay. I have the chorus effect, which is actually crucial because that's what gives the track so much width. So if I turn off the chorus right now, it's gonna be kind of narrow. But then if I turn on the chorus right now, whoa. It's just a lot more wider and a lot more prominent in the mix. I'm adding some more reverb right here. I'd be careful with the reverb because it can get out of the hand very easily, so just be cautious of that. Then I have the bass line. It's probably one of my favorite bass lines I've ever done because it's just so simple, so repetitive, but it just gets the job done. And here's what it sounds like. So I was kind of trying to achieve that old school Moog synthesizer kind of sound because it's known for being very fat, very heavy sounding, and just it has so much low end. It works great, especially in this context. And to achieve this sound, I'm layering two different instruments. The first thing I have is basically a pure sub bass. It's just a sub, nothing really to say about here. What I'm doing is I'm cutting down all these frequencies up to about 250 just to ensure, I mean, if it is a sub, you're really not gonna need everything else up there. And at the same time, I'm cutting up to about 40 hertz because our ears can't really hear up to about 50 hertz. So that's just kind of extra heavy portions that are only gonna get on the way of the mix. So you might just get rid of them. An important thing with your sub bass is that it hits in mono. Unless you're trying to be really experimental and stuff, the safer option is to use an imager. So for example, I'm using the free Isotope Ozone Imager 2, and I'm just taking the width and grabbing it all the way down just to make sure that the sound is in mono. So if I didn't use the imager, here's what it would sound like. And now with the imager, you can't even see in the polar sample right here. It just goes from slightly stereo to mono. And the reason we want to do that is so that the lower frequencies don't get out of hand. They don't go where they're not supposed to be. And then the second layer for the bass line is kind of the top end. Here's what it sounds like. So I made the sound using the ESP synth. You can kind of copy these settings. All of these Logic synths, they look very outdated. They look nasty, but they're amazing. They sound beautiful and they always get the job done. So when in doubt, I kind of just go with these sounds. And the effects, they came from a preset. So these effects I did not apply myself. The compressor, the fat effects, they're kind of just making sure that it doesn't get out of hand. Adding a little more soft saturated distortion, using the console EQ, adding some low gain, although I took off all the low frequencies using this EQ right here, so don't really need that previous sound. I don't know why it's there. But yeah, when you're kind of layering two sounds, just make sure that they're not clashing together. So the region that I took away for this sound is the ones that are prominent in the sub bass, and then vice versa. I'm also adding some subtle tape delay, just 4% wet, but it has a very nice effect. If you listen closely, you'll be able to hear the very slight delay. And it's just a very nice touch that's not as easy to hear, but it contributes pretty nicely. And then for the bass bus that I have over here, basically what I did is I took the two sounds and I sent them to one bus. And I did that so that I can kind of process them one more time together before the mix is kind of ready. So I did some EQing and I'm just cutting down the low mid-range frequencies because they're known for being muddy and just making your mix sound dirty. So I just cleaned up these frequencies. I did use a dynamic EQ for some of them, and that's kind of acting as a multiband compressor basically. And again, I just wanted to give it more of a dirty sound, so I'm adding very little soft chip saturation, and then the Logic Overdrive, which is an amazing plugin. I'm also using the Logic Overdrive to kind of create some more headroom for myself because I'm kind of dragging the output down. As a result, the sound isn't really changing all that much, but I'm kind of getting more headroom to work with. And the most important bit probably is the kickstart because, again, we don't want sounds to clash with the kick. So this plugin right here, again, as I said, sidechain compressor, is just making sure that nothing gets on the way of the kick. If I exaggerate the kickstart effect, you'll kind of hear what it does. That is very groovy in my opinion. I like how it sounds, but that's just way too much. Since we started looking at drums, let's just see what we have going on here. I have two different kick sounds. I have the sub kick and then the clicky kick. If the sub kick was by itself, it would just not shine in the mix. I do like how that sounds, but the kick just needs more life. It needs to be out there. So we're gonna go ahead and add the click kick, which is basically the top end of the kick. That's definitely way better in my opinion, at least. And then we have the snap or the click sounds. So I've layered two sounds. We got one, and then we got two. Yeah, actually there are no snaps over here. It's just two clap sounds that I've layered. And what's really important is kind of the placement. So as you can see, nothing's really on the grid. So things are kind of all over the place, not as much quantization going on. And that's basically done to add some more groove and more swing to the track. I kind of like keeping my instruments off the grid so that they just sound more human. And that touch is exactly what kind of makes your tracks more swung. Then I have a snare sound. Super nice snare sound. It came in very nicely mixed. So as you can see, I literally applied nothing to it. I just left it there as it is. The hi-hats are actually really important for this track. As you can see, they're also hitting very late. So I just kind of dragged them later. And that also contributed very nicely to the overall funk nature of this beat. So it's just kind of not hitting on the grid. It's just funky. Let's listen to the drums, man. That's happening with the hi-hats. I did kind of clear this area right under 500 Hertz. Then I also added a de-esser, the FabFilter Pro DS. You can use the Logic de-esser or whatever DAW you're using. And basically, that's just to ensure that the very annoying high frequencies are out of the way. So here's what I'm taking away. That's all being taken away. And then up until the chorus, this loop is kind of going around. Then right before the chorus, we introduce this shaker sound. If I take away the processing, it'll sound like this. I'm really abusing this kickstart plugin right here, but it just works wonders. Again, we're just using the same 1/4 pattern right here, and it's just ducking every time the kick hits, and it's just adding more groove, more swing. We're using the channel EQ to kind of tame the very harsh high frequencies, and then everything right under 1200, 1300, because there's literally nothing happening there, so we might just take it off just to be safe. And overdrive. I love overdrive on my shakers because I'm able to just kind of tame the annoying sound that they have and just add more drive, so they kind of sound a little dirtier, but not in an annoying way. So I love overdrive for kind of achieving that sound. And then the chorus. For the chorus, the shaker remains here, and I'm mainly introducing 3 things. Although 2 of them are barely noticeable, the main element that we notice is this filtered soap pad, which really interests people, and here's what it sounds like. So I did a lot of processing on this sound. I'm gonna take away everything and you'll hear what it sounds like. It's this beautiful synth pad that I made using the OBXD synthesizer, which is a beautiful analog reminding synth. However, if I play this sound with the sine pad, it's just gonna sound like there's too much going on. Let's listen to it. So you see, that is just way better. This kind of pattern is really unique. You don't see it too much, so it just works out nicely. And the main thing that helped me make this pattern was Logic's auto filter. If we just put on the auto filter, here's what it'll sound like. So you can kind of see the settings that I used here. If you're using Logic, feel free to copy them. And then one more element that kind of helped me further push this pattern was Kickstart. So now we have 2 filtering plugins, sidechain compression filtering, and here's what it sounds like. I did some EQing, kind of to add more shine in the high end, and then make sure that things don't get out of hand on the low end, because we don't want anything clashing with our bass line. So that's what we did here. And then I used the Oxford Inflator, which is a nice plugin, just kind of adds more life. And with this kind of pattern, with this filtered synth, I really wanted to make sure that it's as in your face as possible, that it's kind of up there. And this inflator plugin just helps you kind of get more subtle but nice saturation and just brings everything to life. Then I did some compressing. So you can hear this is what I'm taking away actually. It does sound a little harsh, so I gotta make sure that it doesn't peak too much. And then I'm doing my sends again. I have reverb, more reverb, I have the chorus, and I have delay. So these are kind of the 3 fundamental sends that I like to use. Here's what it sounds like without the sends. and now with the sends. So you can see that it's kind of just more spacious, more atmospheric, wider, just a lot of good things going on there. And that's how I achieved that sound. I also added this kind of alien reminding synth. I'm not even sure if you notice it in the track, but it definitely contributes somehow. Have a listen to yourself. So when you pay attention to it, you're able to hear it, but I made it very quiet in the mix. I just filtered it out completely. And then my favorite section, probably the last thing I'll cover, because that about covers everything, is the G funk lead that I have over here. So here's what it sounds like. I think it's beautiful. I just thought, why not add some Dr. Dre, some West Coast classic sound, and it just worked out really nicely. Honestly speaking, I didn't expect it to work like this. So in the context, here's what it's gonna sound like. Oh yeah, I also have a string sound. It's just literally one note hitting. So to get the sound, I used a synth called Surge. It is a great plugin. It is free actually because it's open source. I use this preset called Butter. So if you happen to have this synth, feel free to use it. And I also layered a very quiet sound using the Diva synth. So that's the Diva synth, and then adding the Surge one over it. So without any processing, it's gonna sound a little dull. Just to get things shining and more in your face, we're gonna go ahead and add the Tal Chorus plugin, which just modulates the sound, adds it a little more detune and some more width. I'm just EQing some very harsh frequencies over here that I probably just didn't like. And I'm using Kickstart again to make sure that it's kind of bouncing right off the kick and adding that groove. So now that the track was ready, what happened is Riovaz got a hold of this beat, and he went ahead and he shifted the pitch of the song gap, and he also made it way faster in terms of the BPM. So let's just kind of take it step by step. I'm gonna assume the first thing that he did is he shifted the pitch up, and here's what it would sound like. So it's the same song, same instrumental, same melody, but the key has been shifted up by 4 semitones. Aside from the key, there was also some detuning going on. So I just took away minus 40 cents, and that's kind of the sound that we get to. But then I guess the main part is really the BPM, because my original instrumental was really laid back. The version that he kind of achieved was so much more energetic and in your face. We're just gonna take the BPM from 110 to 135 and hear the result. So yeah, that is it for this tutorial. I really hope you guys found it useful. A huge shout out to Riovaz. This whole collaboration was super fun, and it's just great to see that people are loving the track. It's performing well kind of all over the place. Really grateful for that. So yeah, you guys make sure to subscribe so that you can see my future videos on this topic, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.